Daddy Inzauto, and I'm here to talk about Near and Far from Ryan Lockett and Red Raven Games. This is a follow-up, and a long overdue look here at GamerNode, but it's a follow-up to Above and Below, and this one also incorporates worker placement elements, but in addition to that, there's some area control and adventuring on a book full of maps, which really sets this one apart. Let's take a look at it. So that's Near and Far from Ryan Lockett and Red Raven Games, and it's a very beautiful and interesting game, and it was one that I was really excited about coming in. I thought that it was definitely a departure from the gameplay style in Above and Below, and I was a little hesitant at first seeing the sort of spreading of area control and building those essentially safe routes to travel the maps. But then when I played it, I really enjoyed that. However, I do think that this one suffers a little bit from the feeling of just kind of treading water, just kind of doing things over and over in a sort of rote way as you play the game. The preparation phase is always relatively the same, gathering up supplies in town, and then going out onto the map board. I feel sometimes like the game lasts a little bit too long, which is interesting because the rulebook incorporates an extended game variant where you add more of those little tents onto your board so that you can play longer, whereas I felt like sometimes I wanted to cut the number of tents down so that play didn't feel too long and protracted and become too monotonous, because essentially you are gathering up your resources, going out onto the map, making a little progress, running out of hearts, coming back to town, maybe doing a couple things, going back onto the map, going a little bit further, landing in different spaces, making camps in different spaces, encountering those stories, and coming back. So I felt like there maybe was a little bit too much of that repetition, but on the other hand, I felt like I wanted to get all that story. I really liked the story elements because in this game, contrary to what happens in games like Above and Below or Tales of the Arabian Nights or any of those other sorts of storytelling games, this one has stories, little paragraphs that are tied directly to the spaces that you're landing on the map. So if you go somewhere on a map, you see an element in the artwork, the beautiful artwork by Ryan, and you get a story related to that, and you get a decision related to that. And then the fact that everything is a cohesive story from beginning to end, meaning you can get a side quest at one part of the game and then later on use that side quest at the end of a side quest. It gives you the following quest in that quest line to follow up on. That's great. The fact that you're going through there is actually some cohesion to what you're doing makes it a better storytelling game than something like Above and Below. But the unfortunate fact for me is that it's not as good of a mechanical game as Above and Below. I think this one kind of really lacks that solid core of interesting gameplay. It's interesting in its storytelling, it's interesting in its narrative, and that's really a fantastic part about the game. But it does lack that sort of underlying set of mechanisms that tie it all together in a way that makes it interesting to play, to manipulate from moment to moment. My favorite way to play, I mean, there's the campaign, which is fantastic, and it has you going from beginning to end, and you get to do all those side quests, but the character mode is amazing because, so I just talked about how I like how the stories are tied to the map. Now I'm going to contradict myself and say that I love the character mode because the stories are curated, they're set out one after the other, no matter where you're going on the map, that these things happen to these individual characters. But again, it's like those side quests where you finish out your first little story bit, and it tells you where to go to next, and it'll be your character's next story. And depending on what you've done in that previous little bit, you go either one way or the other, and you read either this next paragraph or this next paragraph the next time you hit one of those storybooks, and that's really cool. And of course, I really love getting those keywords. I don't know if I mentioned it on the tabletop, but when you go through a little story section, it might say, depending on what your consequence of your role and your outcome is, it'll say gain, a gem, a food, blah, 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 and keyword bunny rabbit. And you write that down. Later on, that can come back and you can get some sort of benefit or consequence later on when, you didn't expect it. And this reminds me of a really fantastic sort of storytelling emergent gameplay element in like Robinson Crusoe, where you play those cards. This is something that I've mentioned before, I think. You play out a card, you do a thing, then you shuffle the card back to a deck and it can come back. Anytime something you do earlier in the game has a consequence later in the game, and especially when you don't know it's coming or when it's coming, that's really fantastic. So I really like that about Near and Far. I think it's a great overall package. We got the beautiful art. I love the map book. I love the story book. I really like the world that Ryan's created. I like that there are a number of things to do. But the only thing that holds it back is that they're not really tied together in a mechanistically super satisfying way. So it gets dinged a little bit for that. I think Near and Far, I'm going to rate a 4 out of 5 on the GamerNode scale. It's a really good, commendable game, and I recommend you take a look at it. And that's it. That's the whole review for Near and Far from Red Raven Games and artist-designer Ryan Lockett. I'm Eddie Inzauto. Thanks for watching. If you like our stuff, hit that bell notification icon and get updates when we update. And check us out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all at GamerNode or /GamerNode. And until next time, you have fun out there.